Hello everybody, here is chapter 14 where we're talking about customer satisfaction, loyalty, and empowerment. So customer empowerment is about when we're giving the customers the ability to influence or even completely take control of the marketing messages they receive. So we see this with email, with loyalty programs. We see this with mobile marketing. We see this with apps. All of these things customers can opt into or out of, control the amount of messages they receive. We even see this with things like Google and YouTube, where the customer is going out and seeking information about a product or a brand. And so sometimes either take complete control of it or at least influence what messages they're getting. Word of mouth marketing is when we verbally pass on information or opinions, and this can really have a very powerful influence on people's purchasing behavior. If a friend or somebody that you respect or you think is knowledgeable recommends a product or brand, you're much more likely to believe that than just an advertisement. So if we can get the right people passing that info or opinion along, hopefully it's a positive opinion, then we can have a lot more influence there. Buzz marketing refers to the amount of word of mouth that's going around there. How much are people talking about our product or our brand? We can create buzz by handing out samples. We can have events, sponsor events or special events, that kind of thing. Press releases that we talked about back in the chapter on public relations. So press releases, we can set up blogs or video blogs, vlogs, YouTube, any of those types of things to try to generate that word of mouth and get that going. There are two different ways that companies look at customer service as a marketing channel. One is it's a very kind of aggressive thing where I actually train my customer service reps to sell other products that I sell or pitch other products. So, like most of the credit card companies will do that. If you call in for customer service on your credit, then they try to sell you additional products, and they have scripts and they run like that. So that's the one way, is that your customer service are actively pitching and selling your other products. And that's what they're trying to do. Some people don't do that. Some people are like, if people are calling with a problem, they don't want to get sold to right there. So they just use it to try to generate that word of mouth, even if it's digitally. So try to get, if they have a good experience, they'll leave a positive review online or something like that. So those are two different ways to kind of look at. One's a little more, active, one's a little more passive, but they both have the same goal in mind. Influencer panel. So influencer marketing is when you target people that you know will influence others. So so for instance, I have this YouTube channel I like where this girl does all these hair videos, and she shows you step by step how to do these things. And so she has lots and lots of followers, and companies will send her products all the time to try out, because what they're hoping is that they know that she influences a lot of people. She'll say, I like this product, I don't like this product. And so what they're hoping is that if they get her to try their product and they like it, she will then influence other people to make that purchase. So if I can get to those people that have a lot of influence, have a lot of sway, they can convince a lot of people to do that. Communities, social communities or social networks are really the same thing there, and that's any kind of social group that centers on a product or a brand. a particular product or a particular brand. I think a great example of this would be like Harley Davidson. That's definitely a community of people who ride Harleys or wish they rode Harleys, and they are very much that. Apple people are kind of the same way, so it's very much like a network there. There's Apple users networks out there online and all that kind of thing. This slide shows you different types of influencers. So an active influencer is willing to tell people, but other people are going to listen to them. So not just so it's not just somebody who's willing to talk about your product, but it's somebody that people will listen to and act on. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is generate an action here. Interested people have a greater interest in the product than the average user. So these are your die-hard, Apple users or whatever. A heavy user, a loyal user sticks with one brand when it works. They might not be loyal because they love your product. They might not stay loyal, I guess, is the one thing. Don't just assume these people are going to stay loyal, because something else might come along to do that. And a lead user is somebody who's willing to try new things and offer feedback. So they get to kind of test new products or ideas or that kind of thing, and so and give you feedback on how you can improve the product. Social media also falls into this area. So that's really just anything that builds communities. So whether it's social networking like Facebook or any of those, Instagram, any of that kind of stuff, blogs or vlogs or podcasts, go under here, wikis, all those types of things are social media. And again, it works two ways. When you put it out there, but you don't have control over it. This is really more controlled by the customer. And I think we've talked about that a little bit before. Viral marketing is when the message, so we want that message to spread through the community. So this can be, I create a meme that takes off, or have a video that gets spread all over YouTube, or my message gets shared on Facebook a lot, that kind of stuff. So sometimes I might do contests through social networking so that people continue to share it. Social media for marketing doubled in 2008 and just continues to go up since then. And it's becoming really one of the bigger chunks of the marketing budget in there. So, excuse me. So this is something that we're spending much more time, and these social networks. So as a business, we're used to seeing Facebook from the consumer end, but from the business, they can give a business a lot of statistics about when people are visiting their site and when they're sharing, and sometimes it's just a matter of timing or how you place things. And so they're giving businesses a ton of information that they can use to use their dollars here more effectively. Loyalty management. Again, we want loyal customers. They are cheaper to market to. They're more willing to pay a higher price for the brand. They're more willing to try new products in that brand. They recommend that brand, and they also kind of overlook problems. And you can see this too. I think about it with phones too. You've got your iPhone users, and then you've got your Android users, and both of them seem to overlook the problems about their own. You know what I mean? Oh, well, that's not really a big deal, because people tend to be very loyal to those types of things. Two types of loyalty. Behavioral loyalty, they buy it and they don't respond to it. But this is more, a lot of times this is more about convenience. I just keep buying this one because I don't want to keep having to check the labels of the other ones, or I know this works. But those guys can be swayed by other offers. Whereas attitudinal loyalty, if you can achieve that, that's more like I'm really bought into this brand, and I'm less likely to try another brand. Like for instance, behavioral loyalty might be, I always go to this gas station because it's just convenient as a location. It's on my way to work, or it's on my way home, or something like that. And so it's not like I love the Sunoco or whatever, but it just happens to me that it's convenient. So that's behavioral loyalty, which is great. I mean, it still gets repeat businesses, but the attitudinal loyalty is a longer lasting kind of a thing, and that's what we kind of work to build. in some of these things. Sorry. So loyalty programs try to develop this. We can collect this information. We can use lots of things. Almost everybody, it seems like, has some sort of loyalty program, and like the grocery store, and they have a lot of stuff. And they work with cross promotional things. They might work with certain companies for coupons, and instead of just their coupons, 2 different companies can work together, that cross promotional, and they give you a couple examples of those in the book there. So positive effects of loyalty programs: longevity. They are they stay around longer, and so because it's convenient for them to do so. They don't pay attention to others' messages. They are willing to try other products that you suggest or that you offer, and they also tend to buy more often. A lot of times, you get so many points, like Starbucks or something. You get your number of points you get there, so that actually encourages more. The example they gave in the book about the accelerator effect was like rats in a maze moving faster as they get closer to the cheese. So unfortunately, I guess consumers like us are rats in a maze, but you get the point there. And it is true. For a loyalty program to be successful, for one thing, the company has to perform well. If I have a loyalty card and the company stinks, I'm not going to use it. The company has to be responsive. A shared identity. You want to generally with these, you want to feel like you're part of a group. And the author apparently was very upset that the Hampton Inn didn't recognize him when he kept going there. So that example is in your book. That's kind of funny, but apparently the author felt very strongly about it. The benefits are clear. So Starbucks, my benefits are clear. I get free coffee. At the grocery store, I get cents off my gas if I do there. And then develop a sense of community or feel like you're part of a community or you're doing something. So those will all make your loyalty program more successful. Let's see, customer satisfaction, that feeling that a person experiences, right? This is really all about whether customers are satisfied or not. It's all about perception. It's what they expected versus what they experienced. So it doesn't always have to be top of the line quality, right? If I was expecting value and I got value, so if I stayed at the Hampton Inn, I'm expecting a certain level of service, and as long as they meet that, I'm happy. If I stay at the Ritz-Carlton, I'm expecting something completely different, based on the reputation and the price I'm receiving. So if I got the exact same level of service at the Ritz-Carlton as I got at the Hampton, I'd be happy at the Hampton. I would not be happy at the Ritz-Carlton, because it's what you expected versus what you experienced. So to improve customer satisfaction, we want to establish the appropriate expectations. We don't want to overpromise what we can deliver, but we don't want to underpromise either. And again, we have to deliver that. It's really based on value. What do the customers want, and what do they expect? We can improve satisfaction sometimes by offering warranties and guarantees, because that takes a little of the risk out of it for the consumers. Post-purchase dissonance is when I get a dissatisfaction afterwards. I go through that entire buying process, and then after I think about it, I'm not sure I did the right thing. With a big product, you have that. That's why when you buy a car, they call you a couple days. I just want to make sure you're happy with your car. Or they call you a month later or a year later. They're trying to minimize that cognitive dissonance or that post-purchase dissonance so that you stay happy with that and you'll come back again. So they just want to make sure that you're not rethinking that decision. How do we measure customer satisfaction? What did they expect versus what they got? And then you could be moderately satisfied or extremely satisfied. Of course, they do lots of surveys and all this type of thing to try to figure out where you are. Let's talk a little bit about when people are not satisfied. So how do we manage complaints? A verbal terrorist is someone who uses the internet and everywhere they can, to bash a product or a brand. I had a bad experience, and I want to make sure everybody knows it. And this is very easy to do now. There's lots and lots of places they can go and complain. You kind of see the same thing with politics. Net Promoter Score. This is a big one. A lot of big companies use this one. My husband works at Citibank, and they are big on Net Promoter Score. You really just ask, it gets down to asking people one question. Would you recommend this company to someone else? And so you take the number of people that would recommend minus the number of people that have a complaint, and that's your Net Promoter Score. And people, some company does that, but I mean all the big companies look at Net Promoter Score. It's a big thing in there. The process for how you respond to complaints is just as important as the outcome. So you need to have a process in place, and you need to remember, this is the customer's always right kind of a thing. And even if you outsource your customer service, remember that you are still responsible for that. You can't say, oh, well, I outsourced that to a company, so that's why you had bad customer service. You're still responsible for responding and resolving or making sure that customers are responded to and their problems are resolved. How to handle a complaint? Listen to what the complaint is. Acknowledge their feelings, even if you don't agree with them. It's really important to determine the root cause and offer a solution. It might not be the solution the customer was hoping for, but you do need to gain some kind of agreement, and then follow up if appropriate. And the other thing is to record these. You want to track these. If you're continually getting complaints on the same thing, you need to follow up on that and make sure that whatever's causing this goes away. Again, sometimes customers are just not happy. You're not going to please everybody, but if there's a problem, you need to know it and you need to fix it. If we have failed to satisfy our customers, it can be a couple different things. A communication gap. Maybe I overstated the benefits. And so I set up unreal expectations that I can't deliver. Unreal expectations. The expectations I set for the customer were too high. The knowledge gap, maybe I don't understand the customer's expectations, or maybe I don't understand the customer's needs. So that would be a knowledge gap there. A standards gap, maybe now I set the standard too low, and so I set the standard too low, and so people aren't getting value. Or the delivery gap, I didn't deliver, I failed to meet the standard that I set. Maybe I set the right standard, but then I just didn't deliver that. I promised your pizza will get there in 30 minutes, and it took 45. So I failed to meet the established standard. If they said your pizza will be there in 45 minutes and it got there in 40, you would be perfectly happy. If they said the pizza will be there in 30 minutes and it got there in 40, you would be unhappy. So you have to set the right one, but if you set your standards too low, your pizza will be there in an hour, nobody's going to buy from you because other people can get it there much faster. So that would be kind of an example there. Lastly, we go into ethics here. Ethics, a company needs to have policies. Ethics is going to apply to lots of things. It's going to apply to our advertising messages. It's going to apply to our customer service. It's going to apply to our pricing. It's going to apply to our relationships with our distributors, product development. All these types of things are going to be ethics. The American Marketing Association brings it down to do no harm, foster trust in the marketing system, and embrace ethical values, which is a little bit vague, but good guiding principles. Good ethics also helps establish customer relationships, which we've been talking about all semester as being important. If customers think you're honest and they can trust you, then you can develop long-term relationships with them. If you're unethical in your marketing practices, you're not going to be able to establish long-term relationships with your customers. So some things, sugging is a phony thing. You pretend like you're not selling, but you really are. So you pretend like it's an educational video, but you're really selling something. Or you pretend like it's a public service. It's not illegal, but it's also misleading. It's deceptive. I'm pretending like it's a news thing, but it's really, or a TV show, but it's really just a sales pitch. Caveat emptor is Latin for let the buyer beware. If you buy it, it doesn't work, it's your own fault. That for a long time kind of was the main thing. It's your job to figure out, it's your job to do the research as a customer. We're really moving, I think, away to that, and very much under consumer protection. So the laws are getting much less caveat, less buyer beware, more consumer protection is how we seem to be moving. There's no regulations against sugging. There are some regulations against spam. There's permission marketing that you have to ask for permission. So that's, when you go to the store and they ask for your phone number, you're giving them permission to call you. Even, if you're on do not call, if you give them your phone number, you're doing that. A lot of, because of overuse of that, people create dump accounts. And I know I have one. I have one email that I give out to stores that want an email or for my rewards program or that kind of stuff. So all that stuff goes into one email so it doesn't clog up my main email. The thing is with any of these things, if you overdo it, if you annoy people too much, then they're going to complain and it's eventually going to become a law. So generally businesses need to regulate themselves if they don't want the government to come in and tell them what they can and cannot do. Privacy laws also come up in here. 1999, it was financial privacy laws, and so that's why you get your the statement every year from the bank that I don't think anybody ever reads. A privacy policy about how they'll protect your use, but this is an important thing. So they have the laws. It applies to both business customers and individuals. But you have, if you're keeping on information on your customers, you have an obligation to protect that. There's going to be all kinds of people out there trying to get that information, and you have a right to protect your customers from hackers, from people stealing information. Some hackers go in and they're not even vicious, they're just doing it because they can, but there's a lot of criminals out there who are stealing information and getting more and more creative in finding ways to steal that information. So if you're building this big customer relationship database to store all this information on your customers, you need to make sure that it is very, very safe. So that's one of the big things in ethics in here is protecting your customers. Now this last section here is not in the chapter, but I think it's really relevant in here. And some of the big criticisms of marketing fall into three categories: how marketing impacts consumers, how it impacts other businesses, and how it impacts society as a whole. So I'm going to tell you what the major complaints against marketing are, and then how marketing essentially responds to these, because a lot of these kind of fix themselves. But so some of the biggest complaints about how marketing impacts the individual. One is higher prices. Ads lead to higher prices. If a company is spending millions of dollars on advertising, that ultimately gets passed on to the consumer in the form of higher prices. If we didn't have any advertising or any marketing, then prices would be lower. Now, marketers will justify this by saying that it creates more choices for consumers, and it disseminates information so that customers know what's out there, and that is of value. And if you look at it from an economic point of view, that does make sense, because if people didn't care about having choices or didn't care about having differences, they would always just go for the cheapest version. If we didn't care about having differences, we would all be driving the exact same car. We would just buy whatever the cheapest car is. But we do have different ones, and we do want choices. And so that's why people are willing to pay more to have choices. If it's something where people really don't care about the differences, like table salt, I know I use that one a lot, but then they would just get whatever the cheapest one is, which is why you don't see advertisements really for that, and you don't see a lot of choices on that. So the customer does still have an input on this based on the purchases they make. Deceptive practices, high pressure selling, and shoddy or unsafe products. With all of these, there are firms out there that do this. There absolutely are. But the point is, they're not going to be around long. They might get one sale, but nobody's going to go back. And we've been emphasizing all semester about the important thing is to build a relationship with the customer. I want a lifetime relationship with this customer, not one sale. So these types of things might get you one sale, but nobody's going to come back. And so these businesses are not sustainable marketing practices. You can't prevent somebody from coming in and trying that, but really these guys are going to weed themselves out. They're not going to be around long. Planned obsolescence or perceived obsolescence is another one. Every year I have to get the new iPhone, or that kind of thing. Planned obsolescence, I feel like printers don't last more than a year, and then they break down and you got to get another one. So did they plan that on purpose so you would have to buy another one, or is that just the way it is? Now, businesses will argue that they are really just constantly changing the product to meet to meet customer needs. Okay, I'm not changing the iPhone just to make people buy a new iPhone. They can keep their old one if they want, but you really can't, right? Because after a while the apps won't update, the operating system won't work anymore. But they're saying customer needs are constantly changing, and so that's why the product is constantly changing. I think it's a little bit of both there. The other criticism is poor service to disadvantaged customers. It's kind of tough because we've said in here before that what we're looking for is profitable customers, right? So it's hard to say you need to sell to these people even though they're not profitable. That's a tough one to answer there. Impact on society. So one of the big ones there is creating false wants and too much materialism. Again, it's about needs versus wants. A business can't make you need something, but it can influence your wants. And it's really the consumer's choice. If I feel like I need to get a new phone every time they update, that's my decision, right? It's, we're grown-ups here, right? And we have to take a little bit of responsibility for that ourselves. Too few social goods, like, eco-friendly things or things that are good for society. What they would argue there is that if society valued those, they would be willing to pay for them. So if they're not, that says society doesn't value these goods, or they would be willing to pay for them. Public television, for example. Lots of people watch public television. How many people contribute to their annual drive? That says to them it's not that important, or they don't really value that. So that type of thing. Cultural pollution, that we are Americanizing the whole world, that kind of stuff. But it really does work both ways. Look at here, how many things, like anime, is Japanese, that has a huge influence on our markets, and foods are much more international and all that kind of stuff. So it works both ways. Some people feel that's a problem, some people don't. As we just become more and more globalized, I think that's going to continue. And the last part is how marketing impacts other businesses. The acquisition of competitors, marketing practices that create other firms from coming in. So this is an example of prescriptions, and if a big guy can do it cheaper or is spending a ton on advertising, it makes it really hard for somebody new to come in on a smaller level. These are, though, where laws come in. There's all kinds of laws to protect competition among businesses, because that's generally good for the consumer. So lots of things like that on other businesses, but this is really the area where laws come in and say, okay, this is not legal behavior, this is, and to try to prevent people from abusing their market power and that kind of thing. Okay, so that is chapter 14.